So, hello everyone and welcome to this introduction to audio management. My name is Jesper Andersen and I am at the Royal Danish Academy of Music in Copenhagen, where I'm sitting here now in our distance learning studio. I was supposed to have been with all of you in Tallinn, but unfortunately it turned out not to be possible, and I strongly regret that because I would have loved to come and have a coffee with all of you in the break and have some good talks and so on, and maybe even a glass of wine later today. But anyway, I will try to talk about what I would have said if I was there in person in this video instead. And this is actually a taped presentation. I did this about 1 week before you will see it. And this is because I'll be demonstrating some different audio examples, and it's very nice that they're included in the video here in very high quality instead of being sent over Zoom or over other systems here. So right now I am here at the Academy in Copenhagen. I have a few pictures for you here. We have been working quite actively within distance learning, video conferencing based distance learning, primarily using Lola and Polycom for 12 years now. And we have around 100 online masterclasses, live masterclasses every year. And we hope for this academic year here we will reach our session number 1000. So we have to make a small celebration of that. You can see here we have different halls and different places where we use the technology, but most of the sessions we have here, they actually take place in the studio where I am now. So I found this picture now, which maybe someone will recognize. This is from The Sound of Music, and I always like this because when we are talking about sound, you can talk about sound as a scientific phenomenon and do measurements of sound and so on, and that's all a good thing. But most of the time that when we are talking about sound in the context we are here today is not just sound as sound, but it's the sound of music. And the music is of course something different than just sound, because music is about emotions and expressions and so on. And I want to mention this because it's very important when we record sound and transmit sound and so on, that we have an understanding of what we're actually doing, that we are somehow distributing music and not just sound. So we need to understand the music a little bit and understand the context of the music, and then we can actually get a very good result. And on top of that, now we're not only talking about the sound of music, but this is the sound of music for distance learning, which again is something that is a little bit it makes it a little bit extra, not more difficult, but it's just a different setting than from doing, how can you say, normal music production. So I have a small overview here of the things that I will go through. And when the video finishes, as far as I know, but maybe I'm being corrected before this video, I will be online for Zoom if there are any questions or comments and so on. But for now, I'm actually sitting here 1 week before you are. So I will say a few more words about sound for art versus sound for teaching. And some words about microphone technique, this phenomenon called double acoustics, echo cancellation, data compression, and then I would like to give some different comments and opinions about how to work with the different instruments. And also I will mention a few words about the video. It's not the primary topic of this presentation, but anyway I have a few words to say about that. And then finally, wrapping off, some words about communication also, which of course is very important. But when we talk about the sound of art versus the sound of the teaching, this is something that we should be aware of when we are making sound for distance learning sessions. You can say that when we work with sound as an artistic expression for music performance, the most important thing is that the listener at the other end gets the most optimal musical experience out of the performance. Whereas if we are working with sound for teaching, it's quite important that the teacher at the other end receives a very honest and very true image of what the student is actually producing. So it means you can imagine that you have a string quartet where the cellist is playing too loud. If we are doing a CD recording of that music, we will use microphone technique to balance the cellist. A producer for a recording will ask the cellist to play lower. But anyway, if there's a balance problem in an ensemble, a sound engineer can adjust that with the spot microphones and so on. But when we work with music for teaching, of course, the chamber music teacher in the other end needs to hear these unbalances to be able to comment on them. So this is very important always to be aware when we are putting microphones and cameras up to make sure are we actually supporting the the teaching situation and the learning outcome for the student at the other end, and not just producing something that sounds beautiful. I'll just give a few examples of microphone technique. I know all of you have very different backgrounds here, so this is just a little bit of sound, how you can see how we normally for classical music will record some musicians playing. So this is a recording. Normally we do for classical recordings, we have a very good stereo microphone setup that will pick up and be really the basis of the sound that we are working with, and we try to find the optimal place to put the stereo microphone. Excuse me. And then for that stereo microphone, we can add some spot microphones. And just to get our ears here and to enjoy a bit of music, here is a stereo microphone recording of violin and piano. This is from the concert hall here in Copenhagen, and only two DPA 4006 microphones. Sounds like this. So a quite nice and natural and balanced sound that might be, if you could listen very carefully to this, I know you cannot do that now, but if you could, you might say that this sound is a little bit boring in a sense, like a documentary recording of the performance. But this is actually what is really good for teaching purposes. I can just play an example for you. This is actually how it sounds when we put a spot microphone on the piano. So this is just a solo track of the spot mic, is actually a stereo microphone placed really close to the piano. When you hear this, then notice the background, that you can hear a tiny bit of the violin in the background, but very, very little. You almost only hear the piano, so it sounds like this. So this means there's a little bit of bleed from the violin into the piano microphone, but actually very, very little. So here we have now the violin spot microphone. And you can notice two things when you listen to this example here. One thing is that a violin, classical violin like this, does not sound very good and natural when it's close mic'd. It gives a honky and not very nice sound. And also you can notice that you actually hear quite a lot of the piano. So the bleed from the piano into the violin microphone is quite a lot, whereas the bleed from the violin into the piano microphone is not so much. So here we have the violin spot microphone. And you can imagine that once we start mixing these spot microphones and you have different kinds of bleed from one instrument into the other instrument's microphone and so on, maybe we are fixing some balance problems in the performance, but we are creating a lot of small problems with all these extra bleed sounds going on. So for distance learning, it is always good to try as far as possible to work with few microphones in a very good placement. Because then we have a natural representation of the musicians that we're working with. Usually something like an ORTF stereo pair gives a really nice and a little bit focused representation of the musicians. So I have another example here of how we can work with microphones in some settings that can be a little bit problematic. So the sound examples I have for you now here, this is from a masterclass. Actually, it is from some video tutorials with our trombone professor Jesper Juhl here in Copenhagen, where he's instructing the Launi Grøndahl trombone concerto. And here, this is just a small clip of the audio from this video tutorial.
There's one thing I would say when you come to this part of it. First of all, there are no.
And I'll just play this again in a minute. If you listen carefully again, you can hear that his voice sounds quite close. A close mic with a microphone almost like the one I'm wearing here, that sometimes is scratching on my beard, I can hear. So he has a very close and very detailed close mic sound for his voice, but when he's playing the trombone, you have a very natural ambient sound from the small hall where he's actually standing playing. So you can just try to hear this once again.
There's one thing I would say when you come to this part of it. First of all, there are no.
So we can try to hear how his speech microphone, it's actually a clip microphone he was wearing here on his jacket, how that sounds alone. And now you can imagine the voice sounds like we heard before, but what happens when he starts playing the trombone when he has a speech microphone right here? It sounds like.
There's one thing I would say when you come to.
Okay, so of course this is distorting a lot because the trombone is so loud. Now if we move to the other end, so this is the instrument microphone, because the recording here is a combination of his speech microphone and then a stereo microphone very far away. So I'll try to play the instrumental stereo microphone now, and you can hear in the beginning, you can hardly hear what he's saying because of the distance, but the trombone sounds quite beautiful and natural in the room.
There's one thing I would say when you come to.
So the way to do something like this actually takes some editing work. This was made in post-production because it was a video recording. But if it was a live distance learning session, we would have to have someone actually turning up and down the microphone when the teacher is speaking or not speaking. And this can be quite problematic. So for some sessions, we sometimes have instrument microphones at a certain distance and then a speak microphone half a meter next to the teacher where the teacher can go and talk into that. But it can also work fine with an engineer that will turn up and down the sound. Exactly for brass instruments that are quite loud, it is really difficult to find a microphone placement where you have a good and loud enough volume for the talking that also fits the sound of the music. So I would like to say just a few words about this before I come back to some more instrumental sounds and tips and comments on different instruments actually. I would like to say a little bit about this with the acoustic spaces we are talking about. Because right now when I'm talking here, my voice is being picked up just by this very close microphone. And it's being played for you over a loudspeaker system in the hall you're sitting in. So you get my voice extremely dry in this video, and it's being played in the room that you are in. Now, if I was playing the trombone here or some other instrument in a concert hall and I recorded the beautiful ambience of the whole hall here, and that hall will be played over a loudspeaker system in your hall, then you can say we have sort of a double acoustic. And that can be problematic when we are talking about distance learning for teaching purposes. In the very old days, around 1900, in the earliest days of recording, it was actually a very big discussion whether you would like to do a recording of a piano and have, you can say, when you play the piano recording at home, it could almost be a virtual piano or a mechanic piano playing it at home in your living room. So do you want the instrument to come home in your living room, or do you want Carnegie Hall to come home in your living room? And there was actually a big debate about that 120 years ago. Now it's generally agreed that when we listen to music, commercial music being released, we like to hear the concert hall acoustics on our recording. But when we talk about distance learning, it's important to be aware that maybe the teacher needs to hear the instrument a little bit, quite a lot more dry and clear and honest and boring in a way, to be able to react to that. And if the sound is very ambient, the sound that we are receiving, it will be played in the room where the teacher is as well, and that can give sort of a double trouble. So what I did here, just to do a funny experiment, is that I took the sound of my voice and then I played it through our system here. So first of all, you can hear my voice recorded just totally dry, like you hear me now actually. And then I played it through our loudspeaker system here and recorded the sound in the room as it would sound. So you can hear a difference. First the voice is dry, then you hear the voice in the room. And then just as a fun experiment to try to exaggerate this, I took the room recording and played it in the room again. And took that room recording and played in the room again. So you actually hear the room more and more and more and more. Now this is not science at all, but it's just to try to give an impression of what actually happens and to exaggerate this problem that happens when we play a roomy sound in a room once again. So here's this audio file.
This is a simple recording straight from a microphone with no acoustic space added. And this is the same sound played in one acoustic space. And here the same sound with 2 acoustic spaces. And 4 acoustic spaces. And here are 5 acoustic spaces. And 6 acoustic spaces.
Yes, you can clearly hear, of course, the sound quality degrades a lot. And the point here is that you can hear what is actually being added to the sound when you play the sound in a room. I had this picture before of headphones. This was because that a very good solution to this problem with double acoustics and also a problem with echo that I will come back to is, of course, if the teacher in one end can wear headphones. But in practical use, we know that if we have a Zoom meeting, for instance, online, it's just so normal for all of us to wear a pair of headphones. But for teaching purposes, it is really not optimal for a teacher to wear headphones because it also blocks the sound that they're hearing in the room. So I mentioned this phenomenon, echo cancellation. And this is something that the most systems that we use for video conferencing, they work with. You can imagine that if you have microphones and loudspeakers in one end, microphone and loudspeakers in the other end, and there's a certain delay over the network, maybe half a second or something like that, it will create an echo, because if I snap my finger here, the finger snap is being sent out in the loudspeakers in the other end, and it's being picked up by the microphone and sent back to me, where it is again played in my loudspeakers, picked up by the microphone and sent, and it will give this ping pong effect that can actually sound pretty cool if you're doing electronic music, but it's not very comfortable for a teaching situation or a meeting. It will sound like some echoes like that. So I have made a small audio example. This is made with a Polycom HDX 8000 system, and here you can hear first my voice clean. Here it is without the echo canceller. So this is just a microphone through the system. And the point in this audio example here is that you hear my voice through the system, but I also am picking up the sound of the loudspeakers I have in my room. So this is a loop with actually 2 studios going on with all the loudspeakers and microphone being open. And if I use the echo canceller, the system sounds like this.
Here is a simple recording with the microphone and the echo cancel function turned on.
And then I have the exact same setup, but where I turn off the echo canceller, and now you can hear echo coming from the loudspeakers.
And here we have the exact same setup without the echo canceller.
Yeah. So sometimes you can hear these echoes coming if you don't have an optimal placement in relation to the microphones and the loudspeakers where they are placed. The echo canceller is a digital algorithm that will compare the sound that the system is transmitting compared to the sound that it is receiving. And if it can see that, okay, now I'm receiving something that is, I'm receiving something similar to what I sent half a second ago, it will try to cancel out that. And it does a pretty good job, especially for speech, but it still does not do a perfect job for music. You can imagine when I'm speaking, there's not a very big dynamic range in my voice. I either speak or I'm quiet. That's it. So it's very easy for the system to know now I'm speaking, now I'm not, this is might be an echo coming back, we can close that. But if we're talking about music, if you imagine you play a sustained note on an oboe that is actually decreasing in volume, it gets much harder for the threshold in the system to know when is the sound actually stopping. So if you have in one end a student playing a very long sustained note, the teacher is listening. If the teacher coughs, that cough is being sent out of the loudspeakers by the student. It might disturb the student a little bit, but what also happens is that the cough coming out of the loudspeakers is being sent back to the teacher along with the oboe sustained note. The echo canceller will do its best to cancel out the cough and keep the oboe there, but you can imagine it's very hard to make an algorithm that can do this perfectly. So if you have again a student playing a sustained note, the teacher coughs, maybe half or 1 second later the sound of the oboe will be doing sort of a small bubbling sound. And this is why we rely on having a very good optimal placement of microphones and loudspeakers, so the microphones do not pick up too much from the loudspeakers. So working with directional microphones is good, and also to have the microphones a bit closer to the instruments than you will normally have if it was a studio recording of music. And also we need to make sure that the playback level of the loudspeakers is not very loud, because then the sound of the loudspeakers will be picked up by the microphone. And we also need to make sure that we put a healthy and good strong signal into the system, because then all of these mechanisms they work much better. I'll get back to that in a minute. But just wrapping off this part of the topic, I can say that it is also very much advised to do manual echo cancellation. It's a really flashy word, but it basically just means that the engineer in the room, when the student is playing a long passage, the engineer will mute the microphone of the teacher, because then the teacher can cough or drop a cup of coffee on the floor or whatever, and it will not disturb the student. So it's very normal that a masterclass teaching situation will start with the student playing a pretty long passage, and for that we mute the microphones from the teacher side. And then once the teacher and student goes into a very more quick interaction and quick exchange of sentences, then you might not be able to be fast enough to cut the sound of the teacher. But again, if you're having a spoken communication, for that usually the echo canceller works really nicely. And also for speech, it is okay if there's a small echo here and there. We can live with it. It's much more disturbing when we're talking about the music. So as I said, it's very important to have some appropriate settings in relation to how loud sound do we send into the system, how much are the microphones gained, and how loud are the loudspeakers playing back at the other end. So I made a small test here where I set up the speech, again myself speaking, with quite nice appropriate settings for the volume, and also a nice and comfortable, not too loud loudspeaker setup. It sounds like this.
And this is the exact same setup, but with suitable loudspeaker volume at both ends, and also better microphone placement and acoustic damping of the room.
And I made the same setting where I tried to have a quite low audio coming into the video conferencing codec. This is still the Polycom system, and also pretty loud loudspeaker playback. And also in a room where the acoustics are not dampened with a big carpet like I have here. So the same setup, but with not so good settings, it sounds like this.
This is a recording with very loud sound at both ends, and no caution in terms of microphone placement and acoustic damping of the room.
And you can hear all of these strange miss sounds in the background, and I'm sure everyone who has been engineering a session on Polycom or other studios, they know these type of sounds. But if we take care with microphone placement and how we use the whole system, we can actually get pretty far away from these problems. Another problem when we talk about Zoom and the Polycom and those types of systems is that there is a certain data compression going on. This is not the case for Lola, for instance, and UltraGrid also, and other DVTS, other types of systems where you can have a very high quality of the bandwidth of the audio. But for many systems there is a data compression, which means that the sound is not being transmitted at a full resolution. And if we make sure that we are actually sending a very good sounding signal, then actually the data compression can do a pretty good job. So we actually get a quite nice sound. So here I have made a recording, again a recording of myself, where I actually just transferred this. This is actually just the raw file, the clean recording of my voice. It sounds like this. Sorry, this is not my voice. This is the Danish duo, viola and accordion duo. Sorry, so this is some Bach music for you. So the direct audio file sounds like this. And then I try to do the same, just taking this audio file and then sending it through the Polycom system, just using the line input and the line output. So now you hear, how does it sound? This is not with microphones and loudspeakers and so on. This is just a clean sound going straight through the codec. It sounds like this. See if you can hear the difference. Sounds pretty close. It depends on how good your listening system is where you are. If you listen carefully, you can hear that the sound a little bit more muffled and a little bit more like, you could say, like an MP3 file. So now I try to take the sound, again this is from the same recording, and then turn the sound down a lot, something like 20 decibel on the file, and then I consolidate that audio file and then I turn it up again. So now you can hear how does a true direct sound without the codec sound if I turn down the sound on one side and then turn it up again. So this is the clean digital signal. It sounds like this. Again, this sounds pretty good. But now I try to do the same through the Polycom codec. So you should imagine now I have the sound, which is like a commercial CD. I turn down the sound a lot, and then I transmit that very low sound through the Polycom. On the other side, I turn up the volume once again, so you can really hear what the data compression is doing to the sound. And it sounds like this. So this is like a stress test of the system, and it shows us that if we have a very good volume control on what we are sending into these systems, the sound is actually pretty good. But if we send in a too low signal, we get a really noisy and really bad sound. And like you heard before, even though the other end can turn up the sound if it's too low, then suddenly we start getting these problems with echo and echo cancellation and so on. So having a good and healthy signal into the system is always really important. Now I would like to take some minutes and then just say some things about different instruments. Now one instrument that we like to work with that actually works really good for video conferencing based distance learning is guitar. You can see here, this is Jesper Sivebæk, our guitar associate professor in Copenhagen. He's teaching to Tianjin Middle School actually, and he has a pair of these ORTF2, this is Neumann KM184 microphones, and for guitar it's wonderful because the instrument is not playing so loud. The teacher is sitting there, as you can see, and also speaking, and the instrument, the microphones will actually pick up his speech very nicely, but also the sound of the instrument very nicely. And for a conventional guitar lesson, the teacher will usually sit like he's sitting here with his instrument opposite to the student, and they look at each other. and they exchange like that. So actually the conventional teaching situation can be mimicked really, really well for a video conferencing based teaching. So a good place to start for newcomers to this is actually to do guitar sessions. It works really nicely. So here you can hear the sound of a session like this, and this is the sound recording here. That's actually the audio being sent here from Copenhagen to the other end.
Yeah, so if you just take the second phrase, yeah, and you go back there, so like a decrescendo.
Yeah, you can hear his voice quite clearly, and the sound you hear is being picked up in the room. That comes from the other side. Another instrument we can try here, this is a bassoon session. This is from what we call the Global Audition Training Program that we had with good partnerships, and also I imagine some people in the room with you there. So this is a bassoon player, and the direct sound of a session like this, you can see above her is the ORTF microphone. It also works quite nicely to pick up both her voice and also her playing.
The E major run, perfect. After this, it's and then maybe.
Yeah, but you can imagine now here we have a picture from a trumpet session, and the direct sound of this sounds like this. And I tried to play this sound once again through our system and record at the other end how it actually sounds for the listener in the other end, and it sounds a little bit like this. And you can hear that the sound is breaking up a little bit. You know, trumpet is a very loud instrument, and suddenly if it's been quiet and you suddenly have a really loud sound, the echo cancel algorithm in the system can get confused in a way. Also, you can see next to her where she's standing, there's actually a handheld microphone for speech, and this is something that our trumpet teachers here in Copenhagen like to use. So we have an overhead microphone to pick up the sound of the trumpet, and then a speech microphone next to them. So this will mimic the setup you saw early on with the trombone video tutorial. Okay, a few words about some other instruments. Now, one of the really tricky instruments for distance learning is piano, because for a conventional piano teaching situation, the piano player and the student and the teacher, they usually sit together by one piano or side by side on two pianos. And it's a little bit hard to mimic that setup for a distance learning session. We try to have a system where we have the teacher like this playing, but the teacher needs to turn the head to look into the camera, and you know from all the video conferencing that you need to look in the camera to mimic to get an eye contact. So the teacher will sort of look to one side and to another side, and you have to have these movements. Some people try to have two screens and two cameras, so one in front of the teacher and one to the side. Also, sometimes we like to see the keys and the fingers on the keys very clearly, but at other times we need to see the posture of the student, how they're working with the pedal and how they're actually sitting by the piano and so on. So that means that it can take some testing, and I would say it can also take some adaptation from one teacher to the other to know what they actually prefer for a distance learning session with piano. Also, it's pretty hard to find a good spot to put a stereo microphone that will both support the sound of the piano and also the sound of speech for the teacher. So many times we work with a spot microphone for the speech that needs to be turned on and off according to if the teacher is speaking or playing. Cello is also a really good place to start for video conferencing based masterclasses, and it's I could say the same as I did before with the guitar, that the teaching situation is very easily mimicked over video conferencing, and also sound of instrument and speech works really nicely. We have had quite a lot of experiences some years ago with organ sessions, which also works really nicely. They are Usually it's something that we have to do on location, so it takes a bit of testing of networks and so on, and mobile equipment set up in an organ hall. And we need to, of course, for organ to pick up the sound of the instrument quite far away in the room, because an organ is not just an instrument. An organ is an instrument that interacts with the room it is in. So of course we need to have a close microphone for the teacher or the student as well. And it's quite interesting also to be aware for teaching methods for organ is that the teacher and the student might be sitting at two quite different organs. They might not even be in the same tune. So it can give some interesting discussions to see how they can actually work with registrations and so on, since they're actually not sitting at the same instrument. Oboe, like I mentioned before, can work quite nicely. Sometimes echo cancelers in Polycom and Zoom and other systems have a hard time with oboe. Probably because of the nature of the sound of oboe. It's a little bit the same with a flute. It's very close to a pure sine wave, which means that sometimes the system gets confused about if is it some sort of a build-up echo feedback, or is it actually the sound of the instrument. Percussion instruments can work nicely. They are a little bit like brass, they can be really, really loud. And also for, which means that you need to take care with microphone for speech and also for the instrumental sound. Also, percussion can take quite some big setups where if we're working with orchestral percussion, where we need to walk through from xylophone to vibraphone to timpani to snare drum to tubular bells or whatever other instruments. So sometimes we need to have a big room, maybe with multiple cameras set up and maybe with a wireless speech microphone that the teacher and student can wear. So depending on the percussion setup, it can be quite demanding. String quartet and piano trio and other type of chamber music works really, really nicely. It relates to what I said in the very beginning, that we need to take care that we're actually representing the ensemble for the teacher as they sound in the room as good as we can. And also we need to take care that the teacher can hear all the students playing and speaking. That's what I wanted to say, because you can imagine a piano trio and you have a stereo microphone above the ensemble, that maybe it can be hard in that setup to hear what the piano player is actually saying. So it's good to add maybe a wireless speech microphone that you can have lying on a chair that the musicians can take if they need to talk. We did have some conducting sessions that can work really well. For that, of course, the picture is very important, so the teacher can see the students' movements in a very nice cutout of whatever they need to see. Usually for us, conducting sessions means that the students are standing with an ensemble. So they're standing like I am now. They have the ensemble in front of them and then the camera in front of them and the microphone behind them to pick up the sound. So the teacher can see how they're working with that. Of course, you can also work quite elaborately with LoLa and other systems with no latency or low latency to actually conduct over the distance. Then we have done a lot of voice sessions for opera singers. They work really, really nicely. It can be problematic with voice with opera singers because the way we want to hear that voice for musical purposes is usually at quite a distance. We need to hear how the voice interacts with the room they're in, and also we need to get this sense of how the voice is projecting in the room we are in. And that means that a good sound for a singer is for a singer singing. That is not a good sound for a singer speaking. Usually we can get away with this, that we have the engineer turning up the sound when the student is singing, and then turning down the volume when the student is singing because they sing really loud, and then when they switch to speaking, you turn up the volume once again to get a loud speaking voice. So that's how it is, and we need to take care, of course, of the balance with the voice and the piano if there's an accompanist there. And then many times we are surprised that the accompanist wants to say something, so we need to have a microphone ready for that. Flute is quite similar to, like I said, for oboe. We've also had quite a lot of accordion sessions here with a good, with pretty good results. For that, it's important to be aware. This is relevant to all instruments, but especially to accordion, that teachers, they might want to have some extreme close-ups of the fingerings and so on, and that applies to both sides of the instrument. So that is quite important. And then lastly, of course, you can also have some lectures where you have some sort of a presentation there. It also works nicely, like you can also have in a Zoom connection. But for lectures, it is very important, and usually technically it can actually be quite challenging. I know maybe someone with you in Tallinn have been working hard these days to set up all of this, because you need to make sure that all the presentation technology and all the different video feeds and so on, that everything is actually working like it should. Even to make this video I'm doing now, I have quite a lot of equipment around me here with recording my voice and the presentation and everything like that. So it takes preparation to do that stuff. A few words about video also, even though this is not the primary focus of what I'm talking about here, but for video I will say that you can come very, very far with a very simple setup, but you need to be very aware what you're actually doing. I have set up a camera here now, and I made sure that the background behind me is very clean. If there are some things in the room that looks noisy, you can say, like if the room doesn't look very well, maybe if I'm in the room, I don't really notice. It's very natural for me that there are some things lying around here and there. But if I'm transmitting the signal to the other end, it can be very, very apparent that there's something not looking so nice. So if the curtain behind me was a little bit off, or there was a gap in it or something, it could look quite disturbing to you, whereas I wouldn't really notice here. Then it's also very good to be aware that, and to remember that a good video is usually where we have right now the camera is set here in the height of my eyes, so and it gives a nice representation. You can imagine if I'm looking down on you or looking up on you, it can actually make a strange platform for communication. So we are always very aware if the teacher is sitting down, standing up, like how high do we actually put the picture. Then some teachers, they like to work with presets for robot cameras that they can incorporate in the teaching situation. That is, of course, really, really nice if that is possible. Otherwise, we can work with multiple cameras and have an engineer sort of guessing the different places for the camera edits. It's also important to consider the light. You can still have a pretty good representation of a teaching situation in normal light in a teaching room. Right now where I'm sitting, I have some video light. It might be a bit too bright up here maybe, but at least it's very good to be careful about that and about the white balance and so on of the picture, maybe to assure that there's no strange shadows in the place. Normally it's good to have a light coming from 3 different angles, so you have one light that shines up the primary part of the teacher, another side that removes the shadows, and then something that actually highlights the background to give some depth to the image. And you can get really far with how can you say, quite basic equipment. The most important thing is that you're actually aware how to do it, and it's the experience that the engineer should always take good care all the way through a session to make sure that the framing of the picture is good, because it might change. The teacher might suddenly change the angle that they're sitting in and so on. So video is something that is very, very important, and if it's very good, then you don't think about it, but if it suddenly is bad, then it's very apparent. Now, just wrapping up here, I would like to take just a few minutes to talk about communication surrounding distance learning sessions, and this is really not related to audio and video and so on, but it's just a few quick thoughts here. So one thing is about planning and coordinating of sessions like this. This is a screenshot from a spreadsheet that I'm using when I'm coordinating sessions here in Copenhagen. Like everyone can find their own system, but it seems like many institutions, they have a hard time actually carrying out sessions because it takes a lot of planning and a lot of communication, looking for dates, booking studios, booking engineers, and communicating about repertoire and so on. It can be really, really big work. So we're all different, and we should all try to find a good system and try to understand the systems that we have on the other end. So it's just to say, if you're planning on doing maybe more than 5 or 10 sessions annually, it actually takes a good system to manage that. Then you can also have some communication on the near end, like I will say in your own end during a session. And this is a picture here from the hands of a sound engineer, and we have Tim Fredrickson teaching in the background. And I put this picture in just to say that it's very important to make sure that you have a good communication in the room you're in with the teacher or with the student. And it's an important point to think that the teacher is suddenly a guest in the studio. Normally a teacher will be in their own teaching room, and the student will visit the teacher there, and it sort of gives a natural hierarchy, teacher-student hierarchy, that might be a little bit old-fashioned, but anyway it works nice for many teaching situations. Suddenly the teacher is a guest and might be a bit uncomfortable in the studio. The students are actually usually pretty comfortable, because a masterclass setting, you're very used to actually just receiving whatever you get, whereas the teacher suddenly can feel all the limitations of the sound and the video and so on. So it's very important to have some engineers and some people there who can actually help the teacher feel comfortable. And also the engineer is not only just doing the technical things, but really needs to take care all of the time to take responsibility for the teaching situation along with the teacher. So sometimes when I've been in engineering sessions, I almost can feel a little bit like a teaching assistant to the teacher. And that's very important to have a good system for that. It's also important during a session to have a good communication with the far end, with the engineers in the other end. Some systems have a chat function built in that can be really nice, you can use, but if the system breaks down, you need to have something else. And we like to use, like many other institutions, this Chatzy, which is a free open chat page that you can use on all platforms and in all countries, as far as I've never come across a country where it does not work. Because if a system breaks down, you cannot communicate within the system. And if you start using emails to write to each other, it can become very long email threads and so on. So at least to make sure you have a communication strategy to know what will you do during a session if there's a problem. And then just finally wrapping up to think about the evaluation, to try to make sure that you have a systematic evaluation of how was the sound quality, how was the teaching outcome, and so on. This is something that we can all do differently, but I think we have now had many places, so you can say it has become a common practice for many of us to do these types of sessions, that right now it's not a flashy, interesting experiment for many, now it's everyday life. And it means that distance learning sessions should also live up to normal evaluation standards for teaching, because it's not just a special event. Many places, at least here for us, it's become a pretty standard way of our everyday life of teaching. So that is really important. And then finally, I'm just looking forward to the future, to hopefully for next year seeing some of you in person and seeing how all of this develops. I'm sure that you will hear more of this during these days here. And I would say from us, we are trying to get a lot of good connections and talk about 3D audio, virtual reality, augmented reality, and those kinds of things. To somehow in the future to use new technologies and network technologies to get presence that would be as close to being really together. But in the end, now I'm sitting here all by myself in a big building, I would really prefer to be with you. So I hope that you all will have a really good time together, and it was a pleasure speaking to all of you, and have some really nice days there. Thank you for your attention. Bye bye.